Hey everyone, so I'm here with Annabel today, and we're here to talk about the most toxic plant foods that you could eat. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. And we've sort of been told from birth that the more the merrier, the more plant foods you eat, the healthier you'll be, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, plants want to reproduce and grow just like everything else, except for they can't run away. So they create something called plant defense chemicals, otherwise known as anti-nutrients, which are designed to harm us and stop us from eating them. So we want to give our list as to what are the most toxic plant foods in, from our experience and anecdotal evidence that we've seen in the community. So, Annabelle, what do you think what do you think is like number one for most toxic plant foods?
So, from what I've been told by coaches and mentors, they said to me, don't ever touch a single legume, pulse, or bean because they tend to be the worst. And I don't know if it's because of the lectins or a combination of lectins and something else. But even in the body transformation world, in health and nutrition and getting into shape, you can only eat specific green vegetables that are the lowest anti-nutrient. So even with them, you're limited. So it's basically just broccoli and cabbage and Brussels sprouts and salad. So basically, yeah, I'd say probably from my experience, beans and pulses and legumes. So things like peas, beans, chickpeas, any kind of grain as well, if that counts. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, I wonder what that is. The thing is with lectins is that, they're one of the fewer anti-nutrients that can be removed mostly through soaking or very wet heat like boiling and also using pressure cookers is very effective for removing lectins from foods. But I think a lot of these legumes also contain like tannins and other really inflammatory compounds that are very hard to digest. I would say nuts and seeds would probably be number one for me because I think of all the plant foods out there. Obviously, plants need nuts and seeds to reproduce and grow. But I think they contain the widest array of anti-nutrients compared to all other plant foods. Like nuts and seeds are really have really high concentrations of oxalates. They have high concentrations of phytates, so nutrient depleting anti-nutrients. They're very high in tannins as well. And not only that, but they're also pretty high in mold, different types of mold, like aflatoxins, which are, quite carcinogenic. There are really high concentrations in stuff like almonds, peanuts, especially sunflower seeds. I think have the highest concentration of aflatoxins than any other seed out there. And while some people sort of tout them as a health food because they have some, I guess, some nutrients in them, how bioavailable are they? I don't think very much because a lot of these anti-nutrients really chelate out a lot of those nutrients, right? So I would say nuts and seeds are probably the most detrimental from what I've seen, but that also leads us into oxalates. I know oxalates for me, I think is the most harmful anti-nutrient out there. And I know that if I eat something like spinach or, beetroot or Swiss chard, I'll be in pain. I'll have kidney pain. I'll have chronic pelvic pain syndrome. It's very much linked with all these urinary pelvic conditions like interstitial cystitis, prostatitis, vulvodynia, and I get everything when I eat oxalates. And there's a study on breast cancer, linking to breast cancer, autism, all sorts of things. So, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think oxalates are dangerous because they deposit and we don't know how long they're in there for, and the dumping process can be incredibly dangerous. Whereas it seems like with other things like lectins and tannins, once you cook them out, you do remove them, or even if there's some in, the body is kind of able to get rid of that. Whereas with oxalates, for some reason, I think because it is linked with so many other things like calcium pathways and other kind of minerals, it just almost takes over. I apparently kale was originally invented for sheep, but it was so toxic that even sheep wouldn't touch kale. That's what I've heard, at least. And so now they're feeding it to humans instead. I don't think anybody should be touching kale. If you're going to eat vegetables, stick to ones like at least broccoli or Brussels sprouts or cabbage. Cabbage is like the master of all vegetables because pretty much everything in the cabbage family does come from cabbage. So, at least those, and they're much lower in oxalates. But yeah, kale and spinach, I think, can be pretty bad, and nuts can be activated, but that only removes the phytic acid or phytic acid. And I don't know how much of it removes, but I know that I didn't have a problem with activated nuts in the past. And then I started to develop some issues with even those, and other people that I know of have also developed issues with even activated nuts. So I don't think that necessarily the sprouting and activating processes even remove everything. So, in that case, kind of like, what's the point?
Yeah, I would say so as well. And from the research I've seen, oxalates don't cook out of food very well, even at really, really high temperatures. So oxalates is something, imagine flooding your body with millions of tiny glass shards. They deposit in your tissues, they deposit in your breast tissues, they deposit all throughout your body, in your brain even. And it could take a long time for them to detoxify from your body. So it's really hard on your detox pathways. It could overwhelm them. So I'd say oxalate is like the number one anti-nutrient that I would stay away from. And I think some of the worst foods for that actually are roots. So the highest concentration of oxalates are in roots, and it makes sense, right? Because obviously plants want to protect their roots. So taking things like a DGL, which we consider to be like digestive healing type root medicine that people sort of prescribe to to people with like gastritis or have gut inflammation. They'll prescribe these things like DGL or marshmallow, slippery elm are insanely high in oxalates. So I would avoid those with a 10-foot pole. Also, these types of gluten-free like flours that people are eating now, these keto type flours like almond flour, has one of the highest concentration of oxalates. So it's super, super toxic, almond flour, which is such a popular food now. I would never feed that to my kids. I'll tell you that much.
Well, and it's processed as well already, so it's
Yeah.
not like you're actually eating the real thing. It's something that's been made in a factory.
Yeah. Now that sort of moves us over to, what else do kids eat? Just tying that in with that, grains. Now,
Yeah.
grains obviously are very high in phytates, which depletes you of nutrients. But this isn't an anti-nutrient, but I read a study recently saying that I think it's like 80% of urine samples coming from kids show that they had high levels of glyphosate in their urine, which is highly carcinogenic. So glyphosate is Roundup. It's a Monsanto chemical that they use as a pesticide, and it comes at high concentration in grains, and it's very carcinogenic, really, really toxic to your body, very toxic to your liver. So I'd say grains would be another thing that I probably wouldn't want to be feeding to myself or my kids anytime soon. Um, and then,
But grains, even without the glyphosate, is still damaging. So you've got, because again, it's something that you'd have to ferment and soak and sprout. But these are not natural things that just already exist on Earth. This is something that we have again made and modified and created in order to, have some kind of a sustenance. But again, it's not actual food. Even if you take away the glyphosate, the grain itself has issues in terms of the digestibility and what it can do, to harm your gut. Maybe that's one of the biggest differences between the USA and at least Estonia, if not all of Europe, is that I know at least in Estonia, we don't use glyphosate anywhere. So I don't think it's in the country. And people here tend to be a lot healthier than what I see in a more modern Western world. So maybe that has something to do with the glyphosate as well, because people here do still eat grains. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
yeah, it's interesting. I think in countries like Estonia, aren't they eating a fair amount of gluten-free grains, which I know has really been adopted here in North America. Like we're looking at like buckwheat and stuff like that. But the problem is with those grains is that they're super high in anti-nutrients, especially oxalate, right? So that's something that worries me quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it'd be better to have, no glyphosate in your diet if possible, because I think it is highly carcinogenic and really toxic to the liver, like I said. Now, one video that we made with, sorry, his name sort of escapes me right now, Tucker Goodrich.
Oh,
We
totally.
did a video about seed oils. And I would say seed oils are a plant derivative that I would say is quite toxic. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Obviously, when these oils are you know um, exposed to heat and light, they oxidize quite easily. They could convert to trans fats as well. And uh, what else? Also, I guess the extracts that they use as well.
Oh yeah, the hexane, and also the fact that it's insanely high deuterium because it is so highly processed. If we can include seed oils, I change my answer. There's nothing worse than seed oils, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess some people probably wouldn't consider. I mean, it seems like kind of strange to label as a plant food, but it is. It's
Yeah, I guess it would be a plant food.
yeah,
It's a
it's
derivative
just a
of it.
processed plant derivative, I guess. But yeah, seed oils are extremely, extremely toxic and lead to all sorts of things. I mean, there have been studies linking into like cancer and all sorts of things, and they just load them up with processed foods. Now it's almost impossible to find a processed food that doesn't contain canola
Oh
or
yeah. I mean, I
sunflower
don't
oil.
go out to eat anywhere because I know everything's going to be covered in seed oils. And the food might be good, but they just destroy it by lathering it in that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They're also really high in omega-6 fats. So again, we have a very heavy diet in omega-6 and quite low in omega-3, which is quite inflammatory. So that's another reason to avoid seed oils on top of all the toxins that and all the solvents and crap. I know that Tucker Goodrich said the canola oil. I can't remember exactly why he said canola oil is the most toxic, but it has something to do with the way they process it.
Yeah, and I mean, what it does to your mitochondria as well, on top of it, if you think about how your mitochondria take energy in through, especially, we need low deuterium content foods. Saturated fat apparently is the lowest deuterium food you could find. And the opposite of that would be seed oil. So that must be one of the highest deuterium foods you can find. And that will mess up your mitochondrial signaling.
Yeah, exactly. And then I would say certain things I would say like, soy, tofu, again, they use a lot of hexane to break that down. Now they say that most of that's removed, but hexane even in tiny quantities is extremely toxic. So I'd also list tofu in there as well. Tofu is extremely high in oxalate, estrogenic. I'm sure there's a lot more problems with tofu, but what's your take
I
on
would
that?
say it's right up there with the seed oils, probably maybe the next one down or just on the same level, only because the soy also has this overly xenoestrogenic and feminizing effect. And I don't know why people pretend that it doesn't, when we all know that soy is incredibly feminizing and it has this, the toxic estrogen. Our livers can't even handle that stuff. It's not supposed to be in our bodies.
Yeah, they when I watch these vegan channels, they're all doing like tofu scramble recipes, which I always find it funny. It's like, why are you making products to mimic meat?
Or
What
eggs.
or eggs? Like it's so strange, right? And I've seen these in the health food store, believe it or not. I see these like faux egg, they look like it looks like egg yolk, and it's just like canola oil and soy, and it's like the biggest list of toxic soup I've ever seen in my life.
How is that better for the planet? Like, I just, how could anybody rationalize that that is good for the planet or for your health? Like the long list of ingredients, the way the ingredients are made, the amount of different countries. I mean, I saw in a supermarket, I think it was like avocados, they came from Mexico were packaged in Thailand and sent back to across Europe. Why are you sending avocados to be packaged in Thailand, for starters? But just the way that these companies, they put all of these chemicals together, and how is this good for the planet or your health?
Yeah. Well, and the amount of water that's used for avocados, right? The amount of water they use for avocados and almonds is absolutely insane. You know, it takes a lot to grow that, and a lot of those are grown in monocrops as well, which are extremely detrimental towards the environment. So a lot of people who are going plant based, think they're doing a lot of good for the environment. I know we're sort of besides the point here, but yeah, I definitely those foods I'd say would probably be the most toxic. I would say list number one, the worst anti-nutrient is oxalates. What would you say about that?
Possibly, yes, but I'd much rather eat spinach than have seed oils or soy. So I don't know where that leaves me.
Yeah, I guess it's just yeah. That's I think it's really individual, to be perfectly honest with you. I know for me, oxalates are just such a horrible thing, and if I ate spinach, I'd be peeing all night for weeks on end. I'd have kidney pain. I'd have bladder pain. I would have pain in my groin area, all over my groin area. And I imagine it's probably not so good for my gut either, So
Yeah.
I think just because some people don't feel the effects of it, they say, well, I'm fine with oxalates. I have my spinach smoothie or whatever. I feel fine. And maybe they don't see it, but over time it breaks everybody down. And not only that, but I think this is just completely anecdotal, but when I have people who eat foods that are really high in oxalate, I notice their joints and stuff just break down. They're riddled with arthritis and other inflammatory conditions. So I would say that's why I list oxalates as the worst on the list. So stay away from those high oxalate food, guys. I'm talking about, dark chocolate, dark cocoa, almond flour, like we said, spinach, beetroot, Swiss chard, um, gluten-free grains, all this stuff that we consider to be superfoods are extremely toxic from my view. And seed oils, like you think, obviously seed oils, it might be a tie for what's the most toxic, but I would stay away from that cheap crap. Stick with ancestral foods that we've been eating, foods that are not toxic to us. And if you guys do eat these foods that are high in anti-nutrients, you need to learn how to cook them out as best as possible. Lectins, I would say, are one of the most harmful and also the least harmful. They're the most harmful because they're designed to create leaky gut. They're designed to create gaps in the tight junctions of your intestinal lining. But you can soak, and when they're exposed to high heat, they could be removed. So that's why I would say lectins might be some of the least harmful anti-nutrients. And really depending on the person, phytic acid actually can have some benefits for some people if they are relatively high, like if they have toxic levels of iron in your body or whatever. Phytates could actually work to help you to some degree, but I think most people are very much depleted of nutrients. So I'd say phytic acid is probably also one of the worst ones. And then I know there's a lot of other anti-nutrients out there. I had somebody reach out to me saying that they had like extreme salicylate sensitivity, and I know that those could be bad anti-nutrients as well. But I would say they're maybe a little bit less prevalent than most. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, just that. Speaking of which, I do want to put a quick disclaimer and say that, as you were saying, with phytic acid, it can sometimes be beneficial. I do believe some plant medicine can be beneficial to people at certain times. But the problem is with plants, and I don't want to demonize all plants, it's just the fact that it's the dose that really does make the poison. And also what you're taking in, you need to be very mindful. You can easily use things like, plant-based enzymes or herbal tinctures and things as a one-off, because they will do a very powerful job at helping you get rid of, for some kind of infection or parasite, pathogen, whatever, because let's be honest, this modern world, none of us are completely safe from those things, no matter how clean our diet. So I think that plants can be used. It's just being mindful of how you do it. And sometimes using plants or using carbohydrates can really help with killing pathogens if your body is producing the white blood cells at a proper rate and knows what to do, and it's strong enough to essentially use that, because they feed on them, right? So your body should essentially be attacking them. And that is a powerful way to do things. I've done it before and it's worked. So yeah, not all plants are evil. It's just that you have to be aware of these things and understand the cost to benefit ratio, and why you would use plants.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd say, like, if you are going to go with plant foods, I mean, could be a little bit controversial, due to, some people think that fructose could be quite harmful, but I would say fruit probably contains the least amount of anti-nutrients compared to all other plant foods. And the nutrition of fruit is a little bit more bioavailable compared to other plant foods as well. And perhaps for that reason alone. But it could be a little bit controversial, but I think that fruits are a lot more natural to our diet than a lot of these things. Like, I would definitely eat a piece of fruit over taking like seed oils any day of the week,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And especially seed oils that are, highly processed, packaged up, bottled, shipped all around the world. They're just highly toxic. So yeah, definitely oxalates and seed oils. I think we could agree on that they're probably the worst things, and
Oh yeah.
everybody should be avoiding them.
Yeah, there's no benefits there, really. I mean, there can be benefits to some plants, but not that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's really it for the video today. If you guys have any thoughts, on anti-nutrients and how they've harmed you, and if you'd like us to make a video on a specific type of anti-nutrient, we've done oxalates many times. We haven't really done anything specifically on any other anti-nutrient. Then feel free to leave in the comments. If you guys, I can't even speak today. If you guys could subscribe to our channel, Red Pill Health, and also Annabelle's channel, Carnivore Limbic Coach, and she has amazing content on there. So I highly suggest you guys subscribe to her channel. Annabelle, thanks again so much for coming on. Your expertise, we got baby genius Annabelle, who is way better at this than I am. And
I wouldn't say that, but thank you for having me on. I like doing these videos, just talking about stuff.
yeah, just shooting the shit. It's fun. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys, and talk soon. Thank you.